Wolves play a crucial role within Elden Ring, as they are associated with Empyreans, beings created with the capacity to become gods and usher in a new age. The lupine half-beasts act as the Empyrean shadow, gifted to them by the greater will to serve as a failsafe in case they decide to steer away from becoming an instrument of the outer god. If an Empyrean revolts against the greater will, their shadow is said to go mad, devouring their master. In Alchemy, Lupus Metallorum is a symbol that represents either the success or failure of creating a philosopher's stone, and is symbolized through the Grey Wolf. It also represents the element antimony. Many alchemists symbolize the element with a wolf due to its Latin name. To some, the metal displays man's free spirit, or animal nature. The element could have been referred to as the Grey Wolf, because its molten form of antimony aggressively devours other metals like copper, lead, or tin when placed into the crucible together. This symbol is heavily associated with fire. In the 12 Keys, Basil Valentine writes about Lupus Metallorum, quote, "Take a fierce grey wolf, roams about savage with hunger, cast him to the body of a king, and when he has devoured it, burn him entirely to ashes in a great fire. By this process the king will be liberated, and when it has been performed thrice, the lion has overcome the wolf. You will find nothing more to devour in him. Thus, our body has been rendered fit for the first stage of our work." End quote. Some argue whether it was truly Valentine that wrote this, or if it was someone from the 16th century using his name. Antimony was used to remove the impurities from gold, and is used in the alchemic stage, calcinatio. The original gold, or Old King, is mixed with antimony, also known as the wolf. The new combination is put into the crucible, or fire, and from that process comes the new and improved gold, or New King. The fire needs to burn away the old to produce something new. The wolf devours the king, and then is burned in a great fire. This process will liberate the old king. Doesn't this sound similar to the Tarnished having to defeat Malekith, a wolf-like beast, followed by the burning of the Erd Tree, the coming of a new age, a new Elden Lord, and possibly the mending of the Golden Order? This fire symbolism continues if we look at the term Empyrean. In ancient European cosmologies, the Empyrean was the place of the highest heaven, which was supposedly occupied by the element of fire. An Empyrean is a candidate to represent the greater will, but what if the purpose of creating a divine line was to one day find the perfect vessel strong enough for the greater will to fully inhabit? The only other physical embodiment of an outer god is Melania, who was also born an Empyrean. Having a physical presence in the lands between would ensure its influence. What if the greater will was seeking to create the philosopher's child through the bloodline of divinity, the Red King being Godwin, the White Queen being Rani? Their offspring could have produced a vessel capable of containing the greater will, which is why his death made such an impact on the Golden Order and the surrounding world. Western thought has long identified a wide variety of concepts as either being masculine or feminine. Fire and air are masculine, while earth and water are feminine. The sun is male, and the moon is female. The Red King represents masculine elements, while the White Queen represents feminine ones. They stand on the sun and moon, respectively. Sometimes they are depicted preparing to consummate their marriage that will eventually lead to the allegorical offspring, the rebus. The philosopher's child, or rebus, is the end product of the alchemical magnum opus, or great work, a reconciliation of spirit and matter. The shadow of an Empyrean is used to purify the old king into the new king. They are fated to devour those that choose to rebel, while at the same time giving those able to defeat their shadows a window of opportunity to challenge the status quo and signal change. Just as the Grey Wolf, when vanquished and burned, allows the new king to emerge, a new coming age. In Rani's quest, defeating the baleful shadow is required to advance her plot to become a vessel for her chosen outer god, the Dark Moon. Side note, her baleful shadow is weak to fire damage, similar to that of the burning of the Grey Wolf. As mentioned, the Grey Wolf is associated with the Philosopher's Stone, which to some represents the elixir of life. In Elden Ring, a Philosopher's Stone could be a viable vessel that is suitable to handle the power of an outer god. In this way, it grants the outer god physical life. The outer god then merges with the vessel to transmute their form, like Melania as the goddess of Rot. Albeit not a grey wolf, within Norse legends there is a great wolf named Fenrir. Fenrir's involvement of Ragnarok was prophesied from birth, although the original story makes it clear that Odin and the other gods' treatment of the wolf greatly contributed to him siding with the forces of chaos against them, eventually leading to Odin's downfall. The reason for his mistreatment is due to the prophecy that leads to the end of the gods. a disappointing loop of expectations. Fenrir was once kept by the gods as a pet, and raised by them, but he grew larger and larger. The gods thought it be in their own best interest to bind the wolf with dwarven chains. Fenrir then remained chained to an island until the day of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, when the 9 realms are destroyed in a great battle. As mentioned, Odin is killed by Fenrir. In fact, almost all the gods fall in battle, including Thor and Loki, but the survivors are victorious over the forces of chaos. The 9 realms fall in flames, but out of their ashes, a new world arises, and order is ultimately triumphant. Fire again, signifying the rebirth of a new age. The tale of Fenrir relates to both Malekith and Blaidd. Malekith, a wolf-like shadow beast, was once known as the death of the demigods, just as Fenrir was fated to defeat the gods, killing their leader, Odin. Plus, Fenrir's mistreatment due to a fated prophecy was similar to Blaidd's betrayal, because his fate is thought to be under the control of the 2 fingers. Both of their fates created fear in their allies' minds, knowing that one day they might turn from friend to foe. In Fenrir's case, it was his caretaker, a god, that ended up betraying him. The betrayal of a close friend mirrors Blaidd's imprisonment by Iji, his close childhood friend. I also found that within Judaism, the prophet Jeremiah warns that the wolf of the desert is divine punishment against transgressors, similar to how the shadows are thought to be the divine punishment controlled by the 2 fingers, aka the greater will. Although the 2 shadows that the Tarnished interacts with seem to remain loyal to their masters, even in madness. Malekith continues to protect destined death, eating any death root he can find, and Blaidd continues to serve Rani, despite his allies worrying about his betrayal. The other Empyrean shadows haven't been mentioned yet, but we do have a strange piece of possible evidence from Melania's shadow, with the scorpion stinger found within the Lake of Rot, where the outer god of Rot was sealed. Could this sealing be similar to the sealing of destined death via Malekith? Speaking of half-wolf, half-men, let's quickly cover the tale of Lycaon, found in the ancient Greek mythos. Lycaon was the king of Arcadia who, in the most popular version of the myth, killed and cooked his own son, then served him to Zeus to eat, to see whether or not the god was sufficiently all-knowing to recognize human flesh. Disgusted, Zeus transformed Lycaon into a wolf to punish him for both his pride and impiety. Interestingly, this myth is one of the earliest that depicts a werewolf. A werewolf is a fictional person who changes for periods of time into a wolf, typically when there is a full moon. In 1487, the Malleus Maleficarum, translated as the Hammer of Witches, claimed werewolves served the devil, giving the rural stories legitimacy and the church an official enemy. It was generally believed that witches could take the form of a wolf, until their animals were replaced by cats, hares, and dogs, in areas where wolves have been eradicated. A sermon at Strasbourg in 1508 proposed that there were 7 reasons why wolves ate men and children: hunger, savageness, old age, experience, madness, the devil, and of course, God's punishment. The Malleus calls sorcery heresy, which was a crime at the time, and recommends torture to get confessions, and death as the only certain way to end the evils of witchcraft. When it was published, heretics and perceived witches were often sentenced to be burned alive at the stake. In closing, the Grey Wolf and the Empyrean Shadow both act as a challenge to conquer in order to grow into the next stage of being. Without conflict, you cannot create change. Carl Jung said that the shadow goes by many familiar names: the disowned self, the lower self, the dark twin or brother. When we come face to face with our inner dark side, we use metaphors to describe these shadow encounters, like meeting our demons or wrestling with the devil. The meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own shadow. The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door to the self. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. I sincerely appreciate all of your continued support, and as always, I hope you have a wonderful week.